So today we want to look a bit deeper into the function of the property bar, which is this area here. When no object is selected on your page, your property bar will show you the page dimensions, in this case A4, the width, height, the orientation, the measurement units, the notch distance, and the duplicate distance. But immediately you select an object, the property bar changes to show the properties of that particular object you've selected. Now in this case, it's going to show you the XY position. Now the XY position is gotten from the position of the X button, or this X mark right in the midst of your selected object. Alright, and the orientation or the dimensions is taken from your rulers, the X position and the Y position, which we'll come to. Then the dimensions are shown here, width and height. Now in this case we have a rectangle selected, and what obtains the options for a rectangle are different from if you have like an ellipse selected. Like you see, the property bar changes to reflect the properties of an ellipse, and in this case if you click here, it changes to reflect the properties of a rectangle. Now whenever an object is selected, you have 8 black boxes around it. These are called handles. Alright, now the function of the handles differ depending on where you are selected from. If you are using any of the corner handles, top corner or bottom corner handles, increases the size of the object and maintains the proportion of the width to the height. However, if you use any of the middle handles, alright, what happens is you are either reducing just the height or increasing the height only, or you are reducing the width or increasing the width only. Now how this affects your work is that it does what's called stretching. That's a term called stretching. If you use any of this, if you are having a photograph, you will see some photographs that are looking so squeezed, like they squeeze them into that box. It's because they actually stretched them. But if you want to get a proportional sizing, you use any of the corner handles, and the term for that is called scaling. Right, so note the difference between stretching and scaling. Now if you also click a selected object a second time, the black handles change, alright, and the corners now become curved. This is for rotating an object. If you click and drag, you can rotate that object from any of the handles. However, if you use the middle ones, this for skewing, skewing. Now what happens, if I could illustrate it, if you remember the music video of Michael Jackson where they danced and they stood in a particular place and leaned forward, it was as if their feet were nailed to the floor. Exactly, that's the kind of effect you get when you skew an object. So imagine this bottom part being their feet being nailed to the floor, and as they lean forward, the area of their feet remains stable, alright, is fixed in one position, and the object just leans. So using skewing is totally different from using rotate. Now the third thing you also need to know about, when you have an object selected, you have this middle button right in the center of it. Now you can call that your pivot, right? And what is the effect? Now if you were to bring this down to the corner of this object, that's the bottom left, and you try and rotate, note what's going to happen. That area is going to be fixed while you rotate. Now if you move it to the other corner, that's to the right side, and you try and rotate, that area is going to be fixed. If you move it to the middle, which is the default position, the object is going to rotate around that center point. And if you move it to the top right and do the same rotation, that area is going to be fixed. Likewise, if you move it to the top left position and you try and rotate. So you see, depending on where your pivot point is, the object will rotate around that axis, right? But the default position is in the middle. Now when you click an object again, bringing back just the black handles, you see the circle disappears with just an X. Now what does that X signify? It tells you the position of this object relative to the X and Y rulers. You see, CorelDRAW has rulers. Now this position here, this X, if you were to look at the position here, you will see it tells you that is 12.124 centimeters on the X axis, alright, and 12.972 centimeter on the Y axis. Now how does that help? If I take this X axis and I type a 0 and press enter, now what happens is the X position has moved to 0 as located here on your ruler, 0 on the X axis. It is still 12 point something on the Y axis. Now you can also change the Y axis to, let's say you want it to be 5. So what you're having now is this position is now 0 on the X axis and 5 on the Y axis. So you can actually use that to get some specific pinpointing or locations of some objects. And again, if you note, within this box you have like 10 or 8 other boxes. Right now the object and the center box is in black, but if we are to change this to the bottom left, that means your X position now is going to take the reading from the bottom right of this object. So if you type a 0 here from the bottom right and you type a 0, 0, if you type 0, 0, see how it's going to affect it. So it's telling you that the bottom right of this object is on the 0 on the Y axis and 0 on the X axis. So there are some certain jobs you want to do that knowing how to use this particular option, the position buttons on the position boxes, alright, can help you move an object to a specific location. Now if you also remember, when an object is not selected, you have your property bar changes. Now what is this nudge distance? Now the nudge distance here just simply says what is the distance the object, a selected object, moves when you press the space bar. Now it looks small here, but let's change this nudge distance to 3 centimeters and see the difference. So if I click on this and I press my arrow, left arrow, I'm going to be moving that object 3 centimeters, which is what I specified in the nudge distance here. Now what if I increase it to 5 or 6 centimeters, which is double what we have, and I click? Now the same object, if I use my arrow once, it moves 6 centimeters. If I use the up arrow, it moves 6 centimeters. So that is one use of the nudge distance. How about the place duplicate distance? The place duplicate distance simply tells you the distance the duplicate of the object is going to be placed on the X axis and Y axis. In this case you have 0.5 cm by 0.5 cm. So if I use a Control D, which is CorelDRAW's duplicate command, now what you see there, the duplicate of the object moves 0.5 to the right and 0.5 upwards. Now how about if I change that place duplicate distance, I change it to 2 up and 2 down. Now the same command, Control D, it now places the duplicate 2 centimeters to the right and 2 centimeters upwards. So that is one way or different ways by which you can use the property bar. And don't forget, depending on which tool or which object you have selected, the property bar changes. Like in this case you have an ellipse. Look at the options that are here for the ellipse. Is different from if you select a rectangle. The options also vary when you have a rectangle selected, and when you have no object selected, that is when you can change the page size of the document you are working in.